Right, good evening and welcome to Mav Essentials Live. My name is Kelsey Bratcher. I'm the Assistant Director for Parent and Family Services, and I'm very excited for all of you to be here with us this evening. As a reminder, this session will be recorded and it will be, you will be able to view it after Mav Essentials Live and come back to it at a later date. It will be posted in our Maverick Family portal. So for our Maverick Parent and Family Association members, you will be able to access the recording to that. So just a little bit about Mav Essentials Live, because I know there's several of you who are new to Mav Essentials Live, and this is your first one. So welcome, first of all. And we are very glad that you are here with us this evening for Mav Essentials Live. The purpose of it, it began during COVID when everything went online as a way for us to be able to connect and communicate with our family members on important resources for families and for students. And so the success of that has continued where we have been able to have families from all over join us online wherever you are. If you're able to locate the chat function, we would love for you to put in the chat where you are tuning in from this evening. So we know that the one we had previously, we had from all over Texas. So I hope that we continue to reach all over the state and outside of Texas with our Mav Essentials Live programming. Again, this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back to it if you have your Maverick Parent and Family Association membership, and you'll be able to log into the family portal and review the recordings of these sessions. They'll be posted the following week of the Mav Essentials Live, so it's great to be able to go back or share with your other family members as well. Excellent. Welcome from Houston and Mesquite on the other side of the Metroplex. Awesome. I know that there's some others from you out there as well. So let's keep going. Our learning outcomes, of course, is that we hope that you are able to identify new departments or departments new to you that you and your family and your student can utilize for great resources and information. That the content is also beneficial to you as a family member, as a professional, as a parent, as a sibling, as a friend. However, you want to utilize this content, that it is beneficial for you. Uh, if you've not used Microsoft Teams before, here's a couple of important features that we will be using or that you can use. If you'd like to be on camera, you can show your face on the camera. Again, it's being recorded, so I can understand that hesitation. Or if you are in a location where you don't feel comfortable with that, we totally understand. We are glad that you are here and present with us and listening. The other feature that you can utilize, I'm sure that this will be interactive and you'll have the opportunity to share with our guest speaker, and that is our microphone. So you can utilize that microphone feature. And when you click on it, it removes the line from it and opens up your microphone for you to be able to talk to us. The other feature that you can use is the chat feature. And so you can, I see a couple of you have found that chat feature and you're able to type in there, but that's where you can leave questions. If you don't want to use your microphone, then you can definitely put your questions or your comments, your interaction in the chat. We would love for you to utilize that. In addition, we just want to make sure that a few community rules are shared with us, that we're all family here, and that we want to make sure that our comments, our questions, concerns, that we're keeping them respectful and general in nature. Um, so we want to just keep that in mind, that we're all family here. This is an open way for us to learn and communicate. So questions are welcome, comments, suggestions, any of that is welcome. That's how we continue to provide great programming for our families. Also, just make sure that while our guest is speaking, that that your microphone is on mute. That way, any background distractions are not happening, not taking place. So if you come onto the microphone, then making sure that when you're finished, you are muting that. Again, we're here to help, and so make sure that those questions, comments are in the chat. We are behind the scenes answering questions, putting information and beneficial things for you there. So once you see that, and of course that camera, already shared about that. If you feel comfortable coming on, you're more than welcome to. At the end of today's session, we will have a survey. There'll be a link that we'll post in the chat. If by any reason you are not able to access the chat feature and you need to access the assessment for today's event, we would love to get your feedback. So you can email us at parents, PARENTS, at uta.edu. That's parents at uta.edu, and request the link to our assessment that we have for this specific event if you don't have access to the chat. But that link will be provided at the end of this session. So be sure that you grab that link at the end of the session and give your feedback. That's very important to us. For those of you who are members of our Maverick Parent and Family Association, thank you for making that investment in your students' um, journey here at UTA and being part of that experience with them. That's very important. We want to make sure that you are utilizing your membership, maximizing those benefits. With your membership card, you can utilize that at our bookstore on campus and receive discounts for items, everything except for technology and textbooks. And so make sure you're utilizing that discount program for any of your apparel UTA needs. Also, make sure that you're signing into that portal, that Maverick Family portal on a regular basis, or make sure that you're getting our newsletters. That way you are being able to see what we have going on. We've got a calendar, we've got the links to our upcoming events, and you're the first to know a, a great, a plethora of information. Excuse me. Also, you can follow us on our social media. We post fun things there as well about what's going on around campus or upcoming events. Speaking of upcoming events, we do have some more events coming up. So next week, I know back-to-back Mav Essentials live sessions, but we've got lots of great content coming at you. So the one coming up on March 10th, again at 6 o'clock, Mav Essentials Live will be about the new UC and the vision for that. And so your student here is able to vote in elections coming up in April. And one of those things is about the new UC. And so we want to inform our families of what that looks like, what that process is, and what the potential of the University Center could look like if the students agree and we have a majority coming up with saying yes for the improvements to the new University Center. So that's very exciting. Of course, spring break is coming up. Campus will be open, but there are no classes, and your students may be going on some adventures or coming home. So be sure to check in with them on those spring break plans. We have another Mav Essentials Live on Thursday, March 31st, Mav Ally. So we hope you will join us there. And then, of course, I'm so very excited about our Family Day on Saturday, April 2nd. It's going to be absolutely awesome. We've got a great service project that we're going to start the morning with. Families can bring donations to our donation creation event. So we will have canned food items, non-perishable items, and create structures with those items. And it'll be a little bit of a competition among some student organizations and families. All of that will be donated. All of the food will be donated to our Maverick pantry that we have on campus. It's new. Um, so students who are needing food are able to access the Maverick pantry. So this will help in replenishing that. So that's the morning of Family Day. We're also going to have a family picnic over at the ballpark, the baseball stadium on campus, and have some great time with our family members. So you'll get to see that day both baseball and softball. They're both playing at 2 o'clock. During the baseball game, we are going to award our 3 scholarship winners. Yes, we have 3 scholarship winners. They will be receiving those checks on April 2nd during the Family Day baseball game. That's at 2. And then there's other activities that you'll be able to do on campus. We have our website updated. We've got our tickets available. It is free to attend, but we're asking for some RSVPs to help us with numbers. And so we'll post that information in the chat for you as well. So make sure that you are making plans to come up and visit April 2nd for Family Day. All right. So we have our amazing guest this evening, Harold Brown. He is our family expert for today's topic. That I know that is why y'all all clicked the button and joined us here this evening. And so Harold, I'm so excited to have you here this evening to talk to us about these conversations and how we can best have them. So welcome aboard. The floor is yours. I'll stop sharing now.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Amazing.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, just full disclaimer, full disclosure. I have currently 3 screens in front of me right now. So, I have a 2 screen situation in my office, and I have my iPad set up over here so that I can just monitor the chat. So I am. If you see my head going different directions, it's not because I'm all over the place. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm monitoring 3 different screens. So I'm actually about to switch and share my main screen with you all. And we want to go ahead and get started. As mentioned, my name is Harold Brown. I'm actually the assistant director here in the Office of Multicultural Affairs, and I have the pleasure of actually overseeing our social justice social justice facilitations programs as well as our experiential programs. So that's what I do here. I've actually been here since I would say probably October 2020. So I started in the pandemic. Funny but not funny, right? This is literally how I was introduced to the campus via Teams. So I will almost sound probably a little bit more comfortable in Teams than I am probably facilitating in person at this point almost, right? And so I'm just happy to be here with you all and spend some time. I believe in engaging people in these conversations because you really get to see a little bit of what we can do as individuals to really help advance our communities. And so we're gonna have a really good holistic conversation. Please do not be afraid to dialogue and engage in the conversation with me because I really receive my best experience in terms of facilitation when you all meet me halfway and tap in the conversation. All right, so we're going to start there. House rules. All right, let's dive on into it. House rules. So our house rules are pretty simple. What our house rules kind of do is they help to kind of, I would say, balance a sense of expectations in the room, right? And really talk through, okay, how are we going to be intentional about controlling the conversation in productive ways. The first rule will be our Vegas rule. Can somebody just tell me what they have known the Vegas rule to be? You can put it in the chat or unmute yourself. I'm
I
looking
mean,
at that.
I know what it is, but I'm hoping that one of our guests
Oh yeah, oh
will
yeah. I'm
share.
sure they do. Let's
Anyone place it in the chat?
see. Anybody familiar with the Vegas rule? Give it a couple more seconds. Yeah, that's it. That's it, Peter. Yeah, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? And so our Vegas Rule 2.0 is an adaptation of that, which simply says what's said here stays here, but what's learned here leaves here, right? I often give the example that there's going to be conversations and spaces where people feel comfortable enough to really disclose and to share and be vulnerable with the people in that space for the purpose of that conversation that's happening in that space. They would normally share with other people. And so we don't want to take over agency and power by taking somebody else's narrative and story outside of the space, right? Without their permission, without their consent. However, if their sharing of a particular experience has helped broaden your understanding or your thought process over a certain issue or reality, then please take that and share that with other people because that's how we start to, again, move us closer to having a more equitable and inclusive community. And so, again, that's what that is in a nutshell, okay? So again, what's said here stays here, and what's learned here leaves here. Okay. Respect, simple. I think we all know how to do that. Respect, right? Shout out to Aretha Franklin. And so I always tell students to give it, you got to get it, and to get it, you got to give it, right? And so we want to make sure that we're doing that in this space. Controversy with civility. Let me tell you what this is not for me, and what it probably will never be. I'm not a person that wants everybody to walk out the room. My goal isn't necessarily for everybody to walk in the room feeling, like, oh, we're the best of friends because we all agree and see the same things in the same light, and all have the same type of thought process. That's not it, right? The goal is that there's work to be done, right, on an individual basis. And for some people, it may click. For some people, it may not click in the same way. And that's okay. But the goal is for us to have the conversation and get the information and context out there. And you as a plant will grow at your own pace, right? And that's all okay. So that means for me, like, we can also, okay, it's okay to disagree. And to walk out saying, like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. And as long as we do it so in a civil manner and respectfully, then we can all have real conversation that doesn't have to be sugar coated, right? But still also meaningful and have some depthness to it, right? And then lastly, brave space. Again, I can't guarantee anybody's physical, mental, emotional safety, and I think this is a big ask even for our government and our country, right? To guarantee all those things to all the people at all the time. But what I can do, I can create a space where you all feel courageous enough to share your experiences and to be vulnerable and to be brave and offer your perspectives. Again, everybody may not see eye to eye, but I want you to feel courageous enough to bring that into the space, because you really will be surprised how many people's thought processes shift and evolve based off of hearing another peer share their experiences in their backgrounds. Any other rules that you feel like will be good for the time we have here today? Any rules you want to add? No. Well, can you all show me by raising your hand or giving a thumbs up in teams in terms of your action, just so I know we're all on the same page and we're good to move on? Okay. All right. I see one hand. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. Anybody else? Want to make sure we're good to move on. Everybody on the same page. Cindy, do you have a question? Are you raising your hand to say that you're good to move on, or you actually have a question? Okay. Awesome. Move on. Okay, move on. Got it. All right, awesome. Okay. So can somebody please do me a favor and unmute themselves and read this statement out loud? Anybody? One volunteer?
Any takers? If not, I'll do it. I'll go for it.
Okay.
In a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. Angela Davis.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. So, just from your own experience, or not from your own experience, from your own perspective, rather, um, for our people in the audience, what does that mean? What does this phrase mean to you in your own words? You can type that. You can unmute yourself and share with the room. And so, spoiler alert, if you haven't caught on, I'm gonna definitely engage you. So be sure to meet me where I'm at. I want to hear your thoughts. This is only as fun as engaging as you all make it. What does this mean in your own words? I'm looking in the chat to see if anybody's typing. Let's see. Anybody? Okay, no worries. So what this ultimately is a call to action, right? A call to action related to, it's not just good enough for us to declare, right? Declare that we are one thing. We actually got to put action behind that, right? I love to compare things to food. So FYI, if you get hungry at the end of this presentation, you're welcome. Um, I like to think that, I would love to say that I will have a banging summer body by the time June gets here. I'm going to have a fit body by that point. But if I'm not actually doing the work to really that leads into a healthy body and the body that I desire, the body type I desire, then am my actions really aligning with my words, right? And what I'm declaring. And so that's no different than this statement, right? I think we have a lot of people who obviously don't want to be deemed racist, who don't want to be participatory in racist behavior or even ideology. But part of doing that is recognizing the way in which racism plays out in our society, and we have to be intentional about putting forth action that is going to counter that racist ideology, and not just in the more overt ways that we see it play out, but also in some of the covert ways that actually oftentimes get past us. For example, like microaggressions, stereotypes, and biases, which we're going to talk about today. So I just wanted to put that out there. Um, is there anybody who will be willing to go ahead and read this quote for me?
I can read it, Harold.
All right.
So, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why do we think this is the biggest lie told to us as children? Like, I'm sure at some point we all have heard this. We may have told it to our own children, right? Yeah, absolutely, Kelsey. Words hurt really bad. What else? Do y'all think it's because to to the point that Kelsey made, words not only hurt bad, but they also leave a lasting impact, right? How many of us, by show of hands, if you can, um, be a team, how many of us have had a phrase, a word, or a statement that somebody has told us a long time ago actually stick with us? Like we can remember vividly to in this current moment. Like what that person said, right? Whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, right? Was a great job. You need to do better, or like, I think you're cool. I think there's again so many things that we internalize via our words, right? And so I think as we get into this conversation today, it's going to be important to acknowledge that the ways in which we talk about biases, microaggressions, and stereotypes, and how we use our words in those particular things leave a lasting impact, and honestly can leave a larger scar than that of an actual physical scar, right? It actually goes with us a lot further and a lot longer. That even after a physical scar is healed, it actually still stays with us and plagues our mind, and ultimately can even impact some of our decision making, right? And so again, these are intentional ways in which we're going to dive into these conversations today. All right. Can somebody, in your opinion, describe what you believe bias to be? What do you believe bias to be? Okay, affinity to certain people or things. Thank you, Kelsey. Anybody else? Okay, so that's actually not a bad answer. That's actually pretty close to what we have, right? And so we understand, and what the definition will subscribe to for the purpose of this conversation is prejudice. A bias is prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. And so we know oftentimes bias is where our knowledge stops and where our assumptions begin, right? And so thinking through that, we all have biases, right? I think that's the first misnomer oftentimes when it comes to understanding biases, is that I don't have a bias, right? And actually, we'll watch a video later that kind of explains what that phenomenon is when we don't think we have biases, right? But we all have biases, and I would say they actually exist on the spectrum, right? Biases can be as large as racial bias, and it can be as small as bias towards cereal. I'm biased towards cinnamon toast crunch. I don't know about you, but I love me some cinnamon toast crunch. I'm also biased against Cheerios. I'm not a fan of Cheerios. I think Cheerios is bland and it's not. I can't get behind it. I'm sorry, friends. I just if you're a Cheerios fan out there, it's all love. We love you here still at the in our Maverick family. Also, and we just can't eat breakfast together. But right, and so again, that's a small bias, right? And I always tell students and folks that in that particular bias, right? Nobody's really incurring any harm or danger, right, to their overall well-being because of that bias outside of maybe what Kellogg's and Muscle Meal. Um, but on a larger end, right, on the more severe spectrum, on the more severe end of the spectrum, when it comes to biases, we literally have the opportunity to really ruin people's lives, right? To really ruin people's lives, be barriers in their progression, isolate them from communities, and really hinder their growth with our own biases, right? And the last point is that in order for us to simply recognize, in order for us to simply defeat our biases, we have to recognize that we have them. We can't exist in this world where we feel as if, okay, I'm at this point in my life, I've lived this much life, or I've done this many jobs, and so I'm free from all biases because we all have them. Biases are our own mental shortcuts. It's how we make sense of the information that we encounter and experience in the real world, right? And so I think it's super important to honor that and to make room for that if you're going to be intentional about counteracting those negative biases. And we're going to get into that in just a second. So let me see if I can minimize my screen for the moment. And actually, let me stop sharing for a quick second because I want to make sure I have my sound going. So give me one moment. Okay, give me one moment just to install my sound. I didn't know I had to do that. So it's going to take a couple seconds. Just want to make sure. And we're good to go. Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna pull my screen back up. All right, enlarge this, and we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Phone started blowing up, all our friends started emailing us about it. But what is implicit bias?
Everybody can hear clearly? Awesome.
Implicit biases are basically thought processes that happen without you even knowing it. Little mental shortcuts that hold judgments you might not agree with. And sometimes those shortcuts are based on race. First, some clarity. Saying someone has an implicit bias is different from calling someone a racist. The word racist is a highly loaded term, right, here in American society. A lot of times, when people are using it, they're thinking of the kind of old-fashioned Ku Klux Klan style racist. But implicit bias isn't anywhere near that, explicit. Implicit bias is something that comes out of ordinary mental functioning, out of how the mind normally works.
We've all grown up in a culture with media images, news images, conversations we heard at home, our education. Think of that as a fog we've been breathing our whole life. We'd never even realized it, what we were taking in.
And that fog causes associations that lead to biases.
I somehow know that if you say peanut butter, I'm going to say jelly. That's an association that's been ingrained in me because throughout my life, peanut butter and jelly are together. And in many forms of media, there's an over-representation of Black men and violent crime being paired together.
And because of that, I actually deep down inside have been taught that Black men are violent and aggressive and not to be trusted, that they're criminals, that they're thugs.
With all those associations, I'm not trying to let us off the hook, but in some ways, none of us stood a chance.
Starting today, we'll post a video a day dealing with one challenge of understanding implicit bias and its relationship to race and exploring ways we might combat the problem. One more thing, if you're seeing this and thinking that it doesn't apply to you, well, you might be falling prey to the blind spot bias. That's a scientific name for a mental bias that allows you to see biases in others, but not in yourself. We're biased.
All right. Thoughts, feelings? How do y'all feel about that video? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Kelsey. Yeah, it is a great way to break it down. I when I saw this video, again, we talk about biases, but we didn't know that there are different types of biases, and two types, obviously. One that's clearly explained, and the other one is the complete opposite of it. So it's easy to kind of understand if you understand one. Is that we have implicit bias, right? Those deep subconscious biases that we don't oftentimes recognize that we have. And then we have explicit bias, right? And those are those overt, like conscious, like I know that I don't prefer X, Y, and Z, or I'm preferential towards X, Y, and Z, right? Those explicit and outright unapologetic biases, right? And so because we have those, it's important to recognize that oftentimes I would say most people, right, can check themselves when it comes to their explicit biases. We used to have people who are very loud and boisterous and proud when it comes to their biases, right? Which, again, I think going to the video, right, that probably is more on that spectrum that oftentimes shows itself up in terms of like people who are, part of Ku Klux Klan. And those people very much so exist, but by and large, a lot of people actually operate under implicit bias. And I think the reality of it is if we can be more conscious and aware around how our implicit bias is just equally as harmful as our explicit bias, then we can counter that and actually move our society forward, right? And so that's okay, again, that we have biases, but you have to be intentional about mitigating those and acknowledging when we need to do away with one, question why we have it, and do the work to make sure that we don't live in it in perpetuity, right? All right, so now we're going to get into stereotypes. So for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to refer to stereotypes as a widely held yet fixed and oversimplified image of an individual, group of people, or a place, right? And so words mean things. I'm a big word nerd, and so like I love things that help to really undergird and contextualize how people really understand a lot of things in the way in which they do. I love the word oversimplified because I think, again, it takes a very short snapshot of something and try to literally prune it down to its most root core ingredient. And oftentimes that's not enough to really understand the full recipe, right? If you pick up where I'm going. When it comes down to a wildly held and yet fixed, right? And so despite us knowing, right, oftentimes that there may be more people that does not fit the stereotype or not, a lot of times we're fixated, right, on believing and leaning into the stereotype despite data, despite lived experiences, despite people who actually counter those stereotypes every day, right? So it's important for us to kind of understand the ways in which stereotypes kind of play out. So now what I want us to do, I'm gonna have us do an activity. And so I'm gonna tap on folks. I'm gonna tap on my friends here to participate. I would love to hear your thoughts. Let's see here. Okay. Miss Josephine, is it Miss Josephine? Who else? I'm seeing Miss Cindy Gonzalez, Mr. Pedro, SM. I want to hear from you all. I want y'all to participate in this activity, okay? Here's the disclaimer. I want you to answer this activity honestly, okay? All you're going to be doing is you don't got to grab anything to write with because we're virtual, right? So all I need you to do is kind of answer in your head, and then we're going to go over the questions together in the end. Let me get my timer out. And so all you're going to be doing, I'm going to put up some questions on the next slide. You will have 30 seconds to answer those questions about me, not about you, but about me. So based off what you see on your screen, what you've heard thus far, you get to answer individual questions about me, and you only have 30 seconds to do so. No, you cannot ask any questions to anybody. No, you cannot partner with anybody. It's just your own agency, own independence, okay? So again, you're answering those questions about me only. So I'm gonna put 30 seconds on the clock. And so we're gonna start now. And don't put your answers in the chat. We're gonna share with the group. So just notate or keep them in your head. And we're gonna finish when it's all said and done. We're gonna share out. So don't document or anything like that. Six seconds, though. All right, time. All right. Thoughts, feelings. How y'all feel about that?
I would say, Harold, the questions got a little bit more difficult when I went down. Like I felt more comfortable guessing whether you're a cat person or a dog person. But then when we got towards the end, when it's like social economic and gender and things like that, that's where I got kind of iffy there. And I was like, I don't know. To be honest, I didn't feel comfortable answering those questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Peter. What else? Anybody else have any thoughts? Miss Cindy Gonzalez, how did that feel? How did that feel for you? If you're talking, you're muted. I'm not sure if you are or not. But how did that activity feel?
I see her typing.
Got you. And while they're typing, how would you all feel if someone answered those questions about you? Oh, it's okay, Miss Gonzalez. It's okay. You didn't have to know me well enough. That's the point, right? That's the point to answer those questions. Just based off what you know thus far, right? I like to sit down and get to know you to answer, and some I wouldn't ask because not my business, right? In my opinion, and that's super fair, right? Obviously, right? Last I checked, research says it takes about 7 seconds to size up a person, when they walk into a room, right? And so if we size up a person and make assumptions about them off of 7 seconds alone, you all had 30 and struggled. So, right? And so, like, imagine the ways in which you really need to analyze and really dissect relationships and be intentional about gaining more information and really getting to know a person right before answering these questions. But again, oftentimes we only operate out of limited information and experience, whether that's garnered in 7 seconds, sometimes 7 weeks, 7 days, 7 years, 7 centuries even. Without a full breadth of knowledge and experience, we operate off of many minor indicators of minor pieces of information that ultimately morph into our biases, right? To help to create our biases and stereotypes and so on and so forth. So just for giggles, I want you all to guess, right? I want you, Josephine, Miss Cindy, I want you all to guess It's okay. You don't hurt my feelings. It's not a wrong or a right answer. I do want you to decide. Okay, that's the only catch. The only prerequisite to this game. You got to decide. And I'll share with you the true answer. So like I have no problem sharing. This is all important. So am I a dog or cat person? Just type into the chat. Dog, dog. Okay. So I'm actually a dog person. Ironically enough, I'm allergic to both. I'm allergic to both. So yeah, you all got it right. So yeah, I'm actually allergic to both, but I'm more severely allergic to cats, and so I actually cannot be around cats. It does impact my breathing, but I am a different dog person. Dogs, they just if they shed, it just impact my allergies. But ultimately, but I can still navigate having a dog. Actually grew up with dogs too, so I'm biased. um, do I prefer coffee or tea? Coffee, coffee. Okay.
Lots of coffee.
Tea. Okay, cool. Okay. So I actually prefer tea. I actually do not like the taste of coffee. My friend told me one time after seeing me put so much cream and sugar into my coffee, they said I should just go ahead and just drink hot chocolate at this point. And so I just never went back to coffee ever again after that. So yeah, absolutely. What is my ethnicity? What is my ethnicity? Ready to see those answers? Again, there's no wrong answer per se. Just what you go out, whatever comes to mind, put it. It's okay. Okay, I see Black American. What else?
Mexican American.
Okay, Mexican American. Thank you so much, Pedro. I appreciate you. Anybody else? All right. So actually, identify as African American. Um, and so right, that is my ethnicity. Um, Obviously, a lot of times people I always give the disclaimer. There's a difference between race and ethnicity, right? And so recognizing that race in an Americanized sense, oftentimes is black or white, Hispanic. These are all identifiers or identifying terms that were birthed in the U.S. under the auspices of trying to again simplify, right? Simplify and codify, categorize, if you will, people without really paying attention to their background. And so again, in the context of me living in America, I am American. But equally, if I was like my friend, one of my close friends, Mike, his family is from Nigeria, and so their ethnicity would be Nigerian, right? And actually, in Nigeria, there are subpopulations, which are subsects of people. One of those types of people being Igbo people who are Nigerian. So for him, his ethnicity can go as far as him being tied to the Igbo people of Nigeria, or just Nigerian in general. And of course, if you want to go as far as African, on the continent of Africa, obviously because Nigeria is a country Nigeria is a country on the continent of Africa, he can even go that far. So right, so ethnicity can go as as deep in terms of your cultural ties, right? And whereas race kind of just checks a box based off like your aesthetics and your phenotype, right? What do you appear to look like in the case of US, in the case of our country's societal understanding of, race and ethnicity. What is my gender identity? What do you all think? Again, no wrong answers. Just show me. Just be transparent about what you think. What you think? My gender identity. Male. Okay. What else? So yes, I actually identify as a man, right? That is actually my gender identity. And so again, there are a variety of gender identity. People can identify as a man, right? Because again, sex and gender are two different things. But can identify as a man, or can identify as a woman, or can identify as a person who is non-binary, so they don't subscribe to either gender, right? And they or gender non-conforming, right? And so they don't subscribe to one particular way of how being a man or being a woman shows up in society, right? And so for me, I identify as a man. Did I grow up in a one person or two parent household? One parent or two parent household? Two. Anybody else? Two. Two. Okay. So I actually, it's this is actually a trick question. It's both. I say both because I grew up with two parents. Unfortunately, my mom passed when I was 13, so she passed in 2005, and it was just me and my dad. He got remarried, and then he ended up passing in 2016 after I finished my master's degree. So I grew up in both a one-parent household and a two-parent household all at the same time. So absolutely. What kind of neighborhood did I grow up in? What are your thoughts? Thanks, Kelsey. What kind of neighborhood? So I know sometimes students may say rural area. They may see I may see suburbs. So I actually grew up in a I would say a more urban area, right? I'm a city kid, born and raised on the playgrounds where I spend most of my days, right? Shout out to anybody who caught that reference. But no, I am a city kid, born and raised. A lot of my family actually hails from rural country town, whether in East Texas or West Texas. So, but I am a city boy at heart. What was my socioeconomic status growing up? Was it middle class, upper class, lower class, blue collar, white collar, no collar? Middle class. What else? So I actually grew up in a low socioeconomic status. It was again just me and my parents, and unfortunately, my dad was a disabled veteran, and my mom got laid off her job. So for a considerable amount of for a considerable amount of time, we were in a low SES status, and so that was majority of my childhood into my teen years. So yeah, were my scholarships need based or merit based? Need. Okay, I see need. Merit based. Merit based. Need based. Okay, need only based on what you need. But here's my trick question. Yeah, so it was actually both. Right, because who doesn't love free money? I love free money based off my need, but I also love free money based off my merit and my skill set. So I had both. Even to this day, if anybody gave me free money based off my need or merit, I would gladly take it. What religion or spirituality do I ascribe to? What religion or spirituality do I ascribe to? And don't exit the conversation on me on this one. It's always funny because usually when we do this facilitation, people tend to on these last two questions tend to like withdraw. I'm like, I don't want to be wrong. It's okay. It's again as all the questions prior, just go off of what you see, and it's okay. Okay, I see Christian. What else? Christian. Okay. So actually, I am Christian. I do not practice to contextualize. I'm a Christian who is more spiritual than I am religious, right? I am a Christian who believe in Christian beliefs. And I also at the same time recognize my spiritual connection to the God that I serve is independent, right? Like I recognize I build that and foster and maintain a relationship and do things to strengthen their relationship. I don't necessarily believe I have to go to church every Sunday to do that. And so, but I would say I'm more spiritual than religious, right? And then lastly but not least, what is my sexual orientation? I'm sorry, that was not the last question, but what is my sexual orientation? Come on, friends, don't tap out on this question. It's okay. What do you think my sexual orientation is? It's okay. Just answer how you believe. You gotta pick something. This you gotta pick something. It's okay. Don't be afraid to answer. It's okay. I guess you're gonna make me answer. Y'all don't know fun. Oh, okay. Thank you, Miss Josephine. Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. It's okay. Yes. Thank you for participating in that way. Yes. So actually, I'm not. I'm actually identify as gay, and so I have been living in my sexual orientation since 2015. That's when I decided to live in my own truth. Right. 2015. Yeah. And so yeah. And last but not least, this is an easy question. Was I in band or sports, y'all? You did both. Another trick question. Is it? I know you seem so. Kelsey, go away. Sports. Okay. So I actually did band. I never did sports. I wanted to do sports. Wanted to, really did, but I had asthma. Still have asthma, but it's not as bad as it was when I was younger. My dad did not want me to do sports and run the risk of me like passing out on the field due to my asthma. So I was a band nerd. I actually had this is true. Marching band is a sport. I actually played the trumpet and I wanted to play the snare drum. But my dad was like, well, you're not that good at trumpet, and I got to endure that. So I would hate to have to endure what it sounds like when you are not good at drumming. So, we just decided to opt out. It's fine. It's all good. In my head, I was a drummer. I was a drummer who played trumpet for a living. All right. So we're gonna move on to our next portion. I know time is winding up. But we're gonna talk about microaggressions, right? And so our microaggressions are the everyday verbal, nonverbal, visual, and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, right? Whether they're intentional, whether they're unintentional, and they communicate messages to targeted persons, communicating hostile, derogatory, negative messages to targeted persons based solely on their marginalized membership, right? And so again, I think we all have encountered a microaggression at least once in our life. And I think if we even were more honest and actually reflect, I'm sure we have also microaggressed somebody. Whether intentional or unintentional, right? Again, this is okay to it's okay to own that in this space, right? It's okay to be brave and own that. But again, let's talk about. I want us to now dive into videos that are going to kind of explain what microaggressions really look like and kind of feel like in the grander scheme of things. Okay, so I have a video for us.
People who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem.
Oh, you're so well spoken.
Oh, just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Also, just as a fair warning for anybody that may get offended, there is some slight cussing in this, but it's not like it's not a cuss word every 2 seconds. It's towards the end, and it's more for exaggerative, emphasis, dramatic emphasis than anything. So just FYI, I wanted to always get a disclaimer.
A compliment. Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while.
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland.
Sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date.
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
Going grocery shopping.
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
Commuting to work.
So when are you gonna have a baby?
Watching TV.
We have to keep the Redskins name. It's part of our culture and history.
Or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John? He's shopping at so bad. I love Cher too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every goddamn day.
Can I touch your hair?
Multiple times a day.
So pretty. Can I touch your hair?
Can I please?
Is fucking annoying. That makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares? Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try this challenging major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
It looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
All right, so thoughts, feelings. How do y'all feel about that video?
That's a pretty good example of questions.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite. It gets the job done. Because I think oftentimes people, right, struggle to understand how microaggressions play out. So I love the analogy of a mosquito, right? It can have very extreme negative outcomes, or it can just be very annoying, right? It kind of to that point like an itch. Like it doesn't slow me down, but it also doesn't make my day any better. You know? Any other thoughts? I'm sure we all can relate, right? In the fact of us experiencing a microaggression based off our identity, and us, still finding the strength to charge forward despite the assumption or the microaggression made about our ability to be able to thrive and be successful, right? And so I think it's also important to recognize that sometimes microaggression can come in the form of double-sided compliments. I think that's the biggest misconception, right? People oftentimes think, well, it's not a microaggression because I didn't mean to harm a person. But again, as you saw in the video, microaggressions can also be those times when you don't mean to harm anybody, right? You can still cause harm even when you're not meaning to cause harm. And so again, I think it's important to recognize and check our assumptions, our biases, and our stereotypes, and how those play out into us verbalizing and conversing with one another every day. Because again, we may say things that we may not even know. Right? Well, a typical one I've used, or not, and I've used, but I've heard, one that students have shared with me in prior presentations was the idea, right, for students who people deem not to be American, right, will say, so where are you really from? Right? And so again, people are not. I would assume, and students have said they don't assume that when they were asked that people were trying to be malicious, and maybe some actually were, but most times they feel like, well, what is it about me and how I show up every day in this world, and particularly in the context of school, doesn't give you American, right? Like, what about me doesn't feel equally as authentic and equally as part of this community in this country compared to yourself, right? And so again, in higher ed, we always say this phrase: intent versus impact, right? Your intention may be one thing, but the impact may be opposite. And I think if you are going to navigate this world, you have to recognize that sometimes your intent and your impact may not match. And when it doesn't, you have to be honest around acknowledging the impact that was dealt and trying to reconcile and fix that, right? To move forward and help people heal. It's absolutely a necessity if we're going to move forward, right? What else? What are some other thoughts about microaggressions before we move on?
Yeah, when I was looking at that video, I was like putting myself in the people perspective as well as the mosquito perspective when I was listening to it and viewing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that you said that because, right, again, it's like going back to the very first part of our presentation, right, when we were around biases. People who do not think that they have biases are actually exhibiting a bias in and of itself in that moment. And so, to your point, I love that you offered, Pedro, that you put yourself in the shoes of the mosquito as well as the person who the mosquito is biting, because I think, again, honest and real reflection looks like me recognizing that I too can be the victim and the villain, right? I think, and it's okay, right? But being able to honor that and say, here's where I've messed up, or here is how I've been impacted by your words or somebody else's words. All that helps us to do is to have really honest conversation and get to the core of the issues. Now, some people, I believe most people, I don't say some, I believe most people, if you call them out in a productive way, right? We like to say call people in versus calling them out, right? You call a person in and say, hey, this is what you said and how it impacted me. A lot of times people will actually welcome to the conversation, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I did not mean that. I won't do that again. How can I be better as a person? And you can help educate, or even, just say like, hey, here's something that you shouldn't do or shouldn't say if you're going to continue to be my friend, right? But then there are going to be some people who are really going to find it difficult to really understand how they have impacted you. And in those moments, we don't necessarily give up on them or throw them away, but we just recognize that maybe in that moment, in that space and time, they're not at a point of growth where they can see the impact that they have dealt. And so, we move on. And, at that point, I guess you can say agree to disagree. And, hopefully that doesn't come at the expense of a real value relationship, but sometimes it may actually come at that, right? Whether it's family, friends, or a loved one. So absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, no problem.
Awesome. So now I want us to kind of do an activity. I just kind of want us to just verbalize, right? So we talked about biases, stereotypes, and microaggressions. I just want to hear from you all now. What are some examples of biases, stereotypes, and microaggressions that play out in our society every day? You see a couple on the screen. One that a lot of times people who take this facilitation often point out, right, is the ways in which we look at Halloween costumes, right? That's the third picture, and how we hypersexualize the costumes that we want women or young girls to wear, right? It's the sexy witch, the sexy nurse, the sexy fairy, the sexy this, sexy that. I'm like, you can't make everything sexy, right? But then also on top of that, what is it? What messages, right, intended or intentional or unintentional, does it send to our little girls, right? Same thing for our guys, our young men. what does it look like when all their costumes are circulated around violence, circulated around harm, circulated around inflicting pain on somebody? What messages are we sending to our young men, our society, so that as they grow up, it becomes almost habitual, right? In some ways, to expect to inflict or to even, perpetuate harm on maybe on somebody else, right? And so again, what are some ways? What are some ways what biases or stereotypes or microaggressions have you see play out in society based off your experience?
Well, go ahead, Pedro. Pedro, were you gonna say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
I was just about to, but yeah, no, I see the example of a Halloween costume. I'm thinking more. I'm a wacky STEM person, right? STEM major or STEM background. One thing I would see example wise is a young girls party, whether it be my niece or something like that. Taking them, instead of like a doll or something, taking them some Legos or something constructive or something like that. That to me, I just learned the hard way with a bunch of nieces and nephews, right? So that's just an example, at least a personal example that I remember.
100%. Thank you for sharing. Peter, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to say this. I mean, this is something that's kind of new to me. So I'm really grateful, for this presentation and this event. One thing that I learned is, we can possibly offend people without even knowing it. And one of the things that I've learned when I started working closely in student affairs is the pronoun. Everyone's pronoun is a little bit different, and we don't really know everyone's sexual orientation that easily. So I'm so used to calling people, sirs or ma'am every time I meet somebody, right? And it was, when I saw that question about sexual orientation, even to this day, I make that mistake all the time when I'll be interacting with students. I know we have a strong LGBT community here at UTA, so I try my best not to assume, if I'm not using the correct pronouns and things like that. So that's something that I'm learning. And when you say, hey, good morning, sir, or thank you, ma'am, or something like that, you don't intend to offend anyone, but to realize that you possibly could be hurting somebody, or possibly I could be that mosquito, is an educational experience for me. So I just want to share that.
No, Peter, 100%. And let me tell you why that's so meaningful, right? Because sometimes we forget that our biases are also byproducts of our culture, right? Our stereotypes, our microaggressions are all byproducts of our culture. Part of being in the South, right, is Southern hospitality. And so it's almost a crime not to, if Pedro did something for me and or I asked Pedro to do something for me to say for me not to say thank you, sir, right? It's not even at that point so much about saying thank you, Pedro. If I don't acknowledge him, right, as an older adult, right, as we like to say, our elders, and I'm not saying please don't take offense. I'm not saying not assuming anything, Pedro, but again, as a person who has more years of life than me, out of respect, I should refer to him as sir. But again, we assume, right, in the South that everybody walks around identifying as a he and a she when they oftentimes may identify as they and them, right? And so it's hard. It's really hard because it's ingrained in the culture. Whereas I think depending on different parts of the world, you probably don't hear thank you, ma'am, thank you, sir, as often, right? And so again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a daily challenge that you encounter. But I love that you brought that up because again, I have to check myself. I'll be honest with you, and I'm love, and I don't mind calling myself out. Even just on this call, I recognize even when you're saying it, like without seeing some people's face, I assumed, right? I assumed Pedro was a he, right? I assume just even me addressing our friend Josephine on the call. I assumed it's Miss Josephine because in my mind, I assume my bias is that Josephine is a woman's name, and so I could be completely wrong, right? And so again, we gotta stop. Is it about what we say about biases? Is when our knowledge ends and our assumptions begin, right? And so I love that you offer that because again, that's a byproduct of our culture. So you are always actively fighting past that. Absolutely. Any other thoughts before we move on? Okay. So I simply have a call to action for you all. Um, Simply put, just recognize that we all have biases. Recognize that every last one of us have biases, and we have to be intentional about honoring that and being truthful with ourselves and others about those. Identify what those biases are. It's okay, right? A good mentor once told me about this when it came to just writing papers in school. But always ask yourself why 7 times, right? I want to do this. Why? Well, because da 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 da. Why? Right? If I think about my career, when I said I want to work in higher ed, he was like, why? Because I like what you do. Because he was my Greek life advisor, my fraternity and sorority advisor. Why? Well, because I think you connect with people. Why? Because I see the impact, right? And he kept getting down to the why, right? Because by that seventh why, you got down to the core of the motivation, the core of the why, right? As to why you want to do these things and why you believe this and why you have this particular viewpoint. So again, ask yourself why 7 times as to why you believe or have these biases or have these internalized stereotypes and microaggressions. Ask yourself why. That's part of the dissecting process, right? Pulling those apart. That helps us to pull and dissect our biases and then decide which biases will you address first. Again, I can't tell you which biases to address first, but if you like me, my serial bias isn't hurting anybody, right? My serial bias isn't again impacting anybody but except Malto Meal and Kellogg. But again, if I had a racial bias, right, I probably want to check that one first, right? Because that's probably going to get in my way. And if not my way, it definitely has a propensity to get into the way of others, right? And then look for common interest groups, right? What is the recurring theme here? Is it that I have a problem with people who look a certain way? Is it because I have a problem with people who talk a certain way? Like find the reason, find those interlocking pieces that are really connecting your biases across different identity groups. And then get rid of your biases. And my favorite one out of all of these is be mindful of bias kickback. And you may say, Harold, well, why should we be mindful of bias kickback? Well, because, right, it's like going to the gym. Again, going back to food and fitness, right? When you go to the gym, we expect that after one workout, which I really wish it was the case, after one workout, we will have the body and the physique goals that we will actually want and desire, right? But that's not the case. We have to continually go back, do the heavy lifting, do the workout to really see the results we want to see. But also recognize, right? Sometimes we go off into the world and we probably order a little bit too much and eat a little bit too much without us really thinking through. And it's okay. And we find ourselves going back to the gym next day and like, oh, I gained 2 pounds back that quick. And so that's part of that kickback, right? I would say that's more of a diet kickback than anything. In this case, be mindful of bias kickback. Just because you're actively challenging your biases every day doesn't mean you still won't employ them in other ways, right? And oftentimes biases doesn't just show up verbally. It can go through your actions, it can go through your decision making, and go through your thought processes. So again, be mindful in all the doorways or pathways that your biases, microaggressions, and stereotypes can really escape and come out into the world. But don't be hard on yourself because of it, right? Acknowledge it, like, whoop, I had to slip up. Let me check myself, and let me acknowledge, address, and advance, right? That's the 3 A's I always like to do: acknowledge, address, and advance. And that's how we again make the work more less of a burden and more of a blessing, right? And then last but not least, I want you to go home as your homework. I want you to be intentional about identifying one bias, whatever that looks like, and really reflect on how you can address that bias. And honestly, just start today. You know, as a saying goes, why say one day when it can be day one, right? And so let's make today our day one, and identify a bias or biases, and start to address those face first. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over for questions. If you can do me a favor, for anybody who has a smartphone, you can scan the barcode on your screen. If you are again if you're not using your phone for this, scan the bar on your screen and take our facilitation assessment. It's really quick, literally no exaggeration. It's very quick. And just put my name. My name is Harold, Harold. And this was the microaggressions, bias, and stereotypes facilitation. Give me your feedback. I would love to hear it. It will also be helpful for our friends here, Kelsey and Peter. So please let me know. You all have been fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with you all. And now I'm open for any questions. Shoot away.
Harold, I have a question. We all have biases, right?
Yeah.
But when we're talking about parents and families, sometimes parents will have different set of biases because they may be in a different generation. Well, they are a different generation, right? And then students here on campus, they get acclimated to different beliefs while in college. How do you, if you can give advice to parents and family members and how to tackle on some of these tough questions with their students. Spring break is coming up, and a lot of them might be coming home, and if these conversations, which is extremely important to have, how what's the best approach to do that, especially when we know the biases between two generations could be extremely far off.
Absolutely. Well, I always start with this. Let's humanize everybody, right? The students of today are going to be the parents of tomorrow, and so you know what that means in the reverse is that the parents of today were the students of yesterday, right? And so I will always encourage parents to really think back to that time where you were liking something or you felt really strongly about a particular value or belief, and your parents looked at you like, "What? Why are you doing this? What is this? I don't agree with this. Why?" And it really kind of channel how you felt in that moment, right? You probably felt misunderstood. You probably felt what's the word I'm trying to isolated. You probably felt lost and confused. And all you wanted right in the moment was your parents to honestly give you some validation. And validation doesn't mean, right? Validation it does not equate to agreement, right? But validation is saying like, I honor that. I honor that. That may be your perspective. That may be how your generation sees it, and that's okay. I'm not gonna make you feel any less than because you feel that way or your generation feels that way, right? But I'm going to, again, controversy with civility. I'm going to agree to disagree, and if that's what it is for you, that's what it is for me, and we're gonna continue to move forward in that vein. And what you will probably see, right, if that was more of a recurring experience for a lot of people, you may see people's understanding and thought processes shift in a dramatic way because again, I don't believe in forcing anything on anybody, right? At the end of the day, part of the change and the work that we do in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, I always say it's three H's: hard work, right? How you caring differently, hand work, what are you doing differently, right? And then head work, how are you thinking differently? And so if you don't make those conscientious changes together, it don't have to be in a particular order, but if you don't make those conscientious changes, then it's gonna always be a struggle, right? For you to see somebody else's perspective. So I would just simply encourage parents to be patient, right? And you may not get everything, right? Even I, as a 30-year-old, do not get everything that my students do, right? But even in that same vein, I have to recognize I have to give them the room and the space to kind of figure themselves out as a person, figure out their belief system and their values. And here's the thing. Just as a seed today will become the tree of next year, they will become the forest of the next decade. Things change and evolve over time, and so believe me, what you think a person, your student, your child, your family member believes today is probably going to evolve over time, right? It's going to become more nuanced. Life and the world would love to make us, the world, so not life, the world would love to make us black and white. It's either yes or no, up or down, right? Hot or cold. But we're not those type of people. We're not those type of people who can easily be one or the other. We have color, we have context, we have layers and nuances to who we are, and so we just got to honor that within each other, and honoring that within each other helps to honor our most humanistic side of one another. That is how you make room. That is how you support your students in
Awesome, great advice, thank you.
that. Thank you. Any other questions? That was a really good, great question. No questions? Okay, well, that's all I have for you, my friends. If you do need anything, you can find myself here in the Office of Multicultural Affairs. We are in the University Center on the lower level. We're actually next door neighbors to these fun people on the call right here. And so you can find me. My email is harold.brown2@uta.edu. If you have any other questions or want to find ways to get your students connected to our office, we have a variety of programs. I'm going to do a shameless plug. I oversee our social justice peer educator, right? It's a Superman emblem. And what it is simply is that I have students who do what I just did. They facilitate conversations for different people on campus. And guess what, friends? It's paid. Yes, that is right. We pay people because we recognize to do this work is not only taxing mentally, physically, but also sometimes financially, right? Because you're taking away from your job that pays you to go and educate people around these important topics. And so we honor that with being paid $25 per hour each session that they do. And so again, it's minor. It's not it's not I won't say we're out here issuing $400, $500 checks every 2 weeks, but we do have students who participate actively and engage and facilitate around campus, and they really enjoy it because not only does it allow them to talk about topics that are important to them, but it also helps our campus become a lot more equitable and inclusive. And so shout out to my social security educators. I wore this shirt today especially for you all. And so hopefully you all enjoy the facilitation. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all in the future.
Well, thank you so much, Harold, for bringing this topic to our parents and our family members. Important information, and these are things that we're talking about on campus with students, and so it's great for our parents and families to know about what's being discussed, but also how you can join in on the conversation as well. And it's things that you can have conversations about at home with the family. You can utilize it to be better professional, better friend, just better in the community overall and how we support one another. So thanks, Harold, for bringing that information to our attention. You had some excellent examples that I had never seen before in this topic. So thank you for that and giving another perspective. And of course, I want to say thank you to you for opening up and sharing, being transparent about you and helping us get to know you as an individual as well. That brings truer light to the importance of asking questions and not assuming about people, and really trying to get to know someone before jumping that, because it can be very detrimental to your relationships with others. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, I hope all of you have also had a great evening with our Mav Essentials Live. Again, there is another link in the chat that is for our office. We want your feedback on today, and of course, to get information about what topics you would like to see in the future. Again, if you can't reach the link in the chat, just email us at parents@uta.edu, and we will be able to get that to you. We won't close it out just yet, but we'll leave it open for you for a little bit. The link is in the chat, but if you can't access it, please email us, parents@uta.edu. Plus, you can email us there at any time if you ever have any questions. You can also give us a call on the Family Warm Line. That's 817-272-2128. And someone will call you. If we happen to not answer because we're not in the office at the time, just leave us a voicemail. That way we can get you a call back, because we definitely want to be able to connect with you and assist you with whatever you have. Don't forget, April 2nd, talk about shameless plugs. Going to remind you once more that April 2nd is Family Day and our tickets are free. However, we're taking RSVPs to make sure that you get your ticket for the baseball games and for our family picnic. Great information on our website for Family Day, and we hope to see you there. See you next Thursday for Mav Essentials Live, where we talk about the new UC. And again on the 31st for Mav Ally. So stay tuned, everyone, and have a great rest of your week. See y'all later.